Hey everyone, welcome to the Next Build podcast. We're joined by a special host today here, Jeremy Rivera. Please
Hi,
introduce
folks.
yourself, Jeremy.
Well, I've been an SEO specialist, consultant, freelancer, in-house SEO, SEO product manager, SEO product developer, all around the SEO space for 20 years. I've consulted with very large enterprise level entities like HCA, Logan's Roadhouse, Captain D's. HCA made me take a drug test and sit on their campus and under a security guard to edit 20 pages on their website. So I'm used to very extreme levels of red tape. And I've also worked on hundreds of different types of websites, from roofers, plumbers, a poop scooper or two. That's a real thing. So I've seen it all. I've seen SEO die 5 or 6 times. Zombie keeps coming back, a little bit different each time. I think the latest iteration is the had the biggest splash, the biggest impact. I don't think that SEO is necessarily the same as it was 5 years ago. It certainly is an evolving game, and the interaction between AI kind of comes in two forms, both in terms of like the product side, the process side of what you're doing, how you're executing. Our favorite industry tool called Screaming Frog. It's like, the Screaming Frog. It crawls through your site, finds all of your pages. They just added an MCP, and I was dancing in the streets. So that type of like, it's just, it's chef's kiss, because I know the level of detail and insight is great. It's also a time of, leavening the loaf, leavening the expectations of what's coming out of this, and knowing and preparing myself for the wave of scammers, the wave of predatory offers and false promises, golden rainbows, just shenanigans out there. So it's the wild, wild west, but that's why I love this industry. It has been the wild, wild west since I joined it in 2007. It was a fledgling industry then, and if you're a notary public, you stamp a piece of paper and you learn how to stamp a piece of paper and be a professional witness. And it's always the same. You do the thing. SEO, search engine optimization, it has changed every single day if you've been paying attention. So that's why I love it. And it's why it's such a difficult and stressful industry.
Yeah, no, people get kind of mystical and magical with it, and I think that's part of the challenge there. I know it's like there's so many things to think about and things to do, but let's talk more about what you're building and how you're using SEO and AI kind of together. I'd love to hear a little bit more about this.
Absolutely. So in the golden age of Google, as I call it, that's from 2010 to 2020, it was enough for you to publish 1 to 4 blog posts on your site and maybe do some keyword research and maybe grab a couple links. And there was enough traffic from Google across all of the brands that you could pretty much, sustain an SEO position as a consultant, as an in-house, and you could see good growth just through some basic fundamentals. Maybe go through, do a site audit, clean things up, look at your site structure. But times have changed. The competition level is more fierce, and the reality is that I used an LLM tool to create content in 2015. And in 2010, I had used a content spinner tool, which was just the pre-form of the LLM, of like literally taking a sentence and it would replace certain words with other words so that you could get away with mass creating more content. And so content has become more and more commoditized as time has progressed. And so it's easier and easier for bigger and bigger brands with bigger budgets to mass produce so much content. And it became so more normalized across the industries that it became too much for Google. they reached a point where they realized, hey, if we continue to follow this trend and reward traffic for every plumber that writes an article about a leaky faucet, we now have 10,000 sites writing articles about leaky faucets. We don't need that anymore. There was definitely a devil's bargain that we had, and they've changed it. And we can complain about it. We can have our problems with it. But, and they have hurt enormous swaths of the population. And I'm really concerned about publishers long term, but that's a different story. The reality is that on the ground, content en masse is now table stakes. You have to come to the table with it. But the problem is that with great power comes great ubiquity with LLMs. So a lot of people don't realize that, you have Claude and these different models are trained off of largely the same data sets. And if you're dipping into the same data set, there's a tyranny of uniformity, a kind of hive mind consciousness of like similar, sameness. And so I was running into this as I was working on different projects where I saw people were spinning up lots and lots of content. It's somehow, despite whatever strange different prompts they might have put in, it started to sound the same. And I had this conversation as I started the Unscripted SEO podcast. I took it over from the previous host in 2024, and I started having these amazing conversations as this revolution was starting to happen. And I realized, you know what? We're reaching a point of LLM usage where, we've already seen what happens if you just go in and ask it for 100 articles and push it to your site. We've seen the SEO outcome. It looks like this and this. So like just copying and pasting without a strategy and just asking the baseline LLM model, give me a bunch of content. That's not a content strategy. That's just getting a dump truck full of stuff and just, it's not even like throwing spaghetti at the wall. It's industrial scale, just pouring spaghetti. And so, I think that the future is human. And there's a lot of pushback. And I see this in conversations. I overheard my wife and her friend, and they were talking about a local, I think it was a karate dojo or a tattoo parlor or something. And they were making fun of, oh, yeah, they obviously used AI for those ads. They were so junk. And the copy, like, what is this? This is totally illegible. What they just get this out of GPT? I'm a huge science fiction fan. Frank Herbert wrote about, the dangers of AI in 1956. And we've spent a generation preparing people, introducing characters like Data, introducing Robbie the robot. And there's this idea that, the pinnacle of human technology is AI. But then in the reality, in the mundane implementation of it, AI has been, codified with slop, with it's AI slop. It's low effort. It's GPT. Oh, is that GPT? It's like a derogatory slang word. And it's because of a misunderstanding of what LLMs are, the language learning model behind it. I loved the article by Wolfram Alpha, one of the founders of the LLM process, and how we broke down what's actually happening behind the scene. And it's just math. It's a parrot that is really good at math, and it sounds like English most of the time. Now, Claude is really good at it most of the time. I'm not shitting here on AI, period. I'm just saying that the way that people treated it is like it was data from enterprise, and you could ask it anything and it would come up with a unique individualized response that would be a coherent and cohesive to the particular problem. The real problem is that you're not giving it the proper context to pull the answer that aligns with the answer that you want to be given for your purpose. So as I started doing these podcasts, I realized every single conversation I was having in the Unscripted SEO podcast, I struggled when I first started to try to get transcripts. It was really difficult to get quality transcripts out. And AI genuinely helped with that so much, so much to the point where now, with a lot of trial and error, now I'm processing the content that comes out of the genuine human conversation way better than any keyword research tool. I'm sorry, SEMrush. I'm sorry, Ahrefs. But two SEOs, spit and tax, sharing stories, sharing insights of what are the pain points, what are the processes of SEO, never going to come out of a keyword research tool. You're not going to find that pattern in the keyword volume. You're not going to know what the trends are or what the difficulty is with the overregulation of the cannabis industry, and the binary nature of success and failure. You can succeed by failing or fail by succeeding. Every industry and niche has its own anecdotes, and that's something that, keyword volume totally ignores anecdotal keywords. That's lost in what's called the long tail. There's a huge amount of people searching for Kentucky Derby, but, a very few number of people searching for why do people wear toilets on their heads when they go to the Kentucky Derby as a string. And so as LLMs become more ubiquitous, they're focused on those long tail keywords. And so the keyword volume metric that has been the driving force of, oh, hey, that's opportunity, is gone. And a lot of the visibility that we relied on that side of things is also slipping away into more of a black box. And so what I've been doing as a process is actually leveraging these human conversations one-to-one, taking the transcript and then turning it into, I have a series of prompts in which, Mason, you definitely helped me level up that process, because I was chunkily going in on the web version of Claude and asking it to do something, which it would 70% of the time. It worked every time. And it would work most of the time, except then every other, fourth time I'd be like, wait, I wanted it to give me a cleaned up dialogue, just the back and forth. It removed a section. And then it invented a quote by me. And I didn't ask that question, and he didn't give that answer. So I had to figure out, okay, how do I communicate to Claude its proper role? How do I communicate exactly what I'm trying to get out of this? And then realizing, I'm even using the wrong interface, because I was using Claude Web, and then I wasn't using a skill. And apparently, y'all should know that you can turn down the temperature, that inventiveness, by turning it into a skill, so you can get a more repeatable outcome out of it. So it's been this journey of hitting my head of okay, this works. No, it didn't work. I don't know why. And then figuring out, okay, I'm not even using this super tool correctly. And, it's trial and error, but basically I have now a process which will take a transcript from a video, turn it into an article for both my main site, SEOarcade.com, for my agency, an article for my guest, a YouTube show notes, the Castos, that's my podcast distribution, so I need a show notes for that. Social media posts for all of my channels, so that's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, Substack, Medium, and the list keeps getting added to. But it gives me those blurbs. And now, since the last time we talked, I found Blotato is an AI-powered social media posting tool, but it has an MCP, and I'm mostly using it now so that my Claude can schedule those posts from that one podcast, take those social posts that I created in that one prompt, and actually schedule out 3 weeks worth of promotion from each of those episodes. So I was noticing that I would only talk about an episode one time on social media, because then I'd have a new guest, and then I had shiny object syndrome, and I never went back to promote it. And distribution is the whole game now. I think it was Mike King or Richard Simmons in the SEO industry who recently wrote about the content moat. The moat around your business used to be content at volume. Now it is distribution, because just because you create a bunch of stuff doesn't necessarily guarantee that anybody's going to see it. So now you have to play in this outer layer, pushing stuff off of your site. But that doesn't mean that your site is worthless or valueless. It's actually more valuable because you're being validated externally on the web more than ever. And those processes are in more detail, they're more finite. And so that means that you have to be outward even more, but that outward push has to have a center. You know, it's like martial arts. You have to find your center. And like Sammo Hung, the famous overweight martial artist, I just have a very large center.
You're using some of your personal connections and your abilities when you're doing podcasts and when you're talking with people to build your own. I know that answers another question for a lot of people and what you're using. They talk about having your database or your research center of people that can answer questions. They're going to have an AI that is basically a group of researchers, like a whole room full of the smartest people in the world. You're doing that with the smartest people in the world, but using AI to kind of go back and filter through those conversations. You're making a bigger push for the podcast as of right now. That's more because of the personalization of it.
Well, the reason why I'm pushing it is because it's both a medium and a channel. It's a distribution channel in and of itself, but the medium of the conversation, I think, is really going to be the last preserve of information gain. I was speaking to my close friend, Michael McDougald, longtime entrepreneur, and he was talking about this concept of, people are making these articles, they're writing these things, but there's no true information gained by the internet when it's published. And that goes back to that example of a leaky faucet. There's not a new way of like fixing a leaky faucet, but there are new ways in value in conversation of doing an interview with a construction crew, with a home improvement specialist. He's got 4 or 5 different businesses. He's going to have anecdotes and insights that share that experience over time that you can tap into. And so this goes back to Google's EEAT: experience, expertise, authority, and trust. It's 2 E's. You get that in a podcast because it's human to human and you're exploring their history. And part of it is anecdotes. Sometimes people will come loaded with data that they've stored in the back of their brain and they bring it out at a particular point. But there's more about just off the cuff value of those insights that makes for great sourcing. Like I recommend anybody that's doing digital marketing right now, sit down and interview the CEO. If you can get somebody else external to do it, even better, because then they put on their song and dance a little bit more. If you're too casual inside and they may use more jargon and you're going to have to do more filtering. But even those internal, like those should be recorded and stored so that you can extract from those conversations. Okay, he thinks that our value, and I interviewed, I was helping on a precast concrete wall client, and I sat down with the person I was subcontracting with, and we interviewed him, and we were asking questions about the brand, like, what's your positioning? How do you want to come across? What is the biggest problem that you see that your product solves for your clients? What's the biggest friction point for your sales people that are trying to close this? So not all of that, like I'd say over half of that conversation wasn't appropriate to turn into content. But there was definitely like a shining 10, 15-minute stretch, that's 500 to 1,000 words, where we took it and ran with it. Like he pointed out, every call somebody's asking about our walls, and they want to know if people are just going to dig under them. And I'm like, well, do we have anti-dig technology? Yeah, we do. We just never talk about it until they call. I'm like, then we need to put it on there. If they ask about it every time, then we need to put it on the website. And that's the kind of like duh moment, but that comes out like in taking the time to step out of the keyword research tools and connect with the client and have that conversation. But now you're weaponized with AI recording to be able to extract those insights and leverage them to create content of value and worth. And it's also notable that like just because somebody has AI doesn't mean that they're going to come up with a good idea. Like that same person, he came back and he thought it was a great idea to create a page for every single city in Florida to say why their walls were best in, Fort Lauderdale and Sarasota and this. And what it came back with was 25 tables. And I'm like, you just type this into GPT to give you a bunch of information, right? I'm like, okay, there's no anecdote, there's no value. Like, there's too many tables. If people wanted just a download of, Sarasota permanent concrete walls, they're going to type that in. You need to bring something to that equation. You need to add information to that. That's the information game that I was talking about. So for me, that's why I've really restructured my entire consulting business and agency to be, podcast centric. Like, if you go to seoarcade.com, you'll see I spell it out of like, I'll either, set up a podcast for you and find a guest, find hosts, and interview people that are of interest to create that content and execute that for you. Or if you want to be the host, I can plug you into that circuit as well. But I really think this format and channel just is so rich because you can build links, you build connections. If you know what you're doing, then you're building a distribution system. Every single conversation with another business owner, the chance to multiply your reach by their audience. It's something that I suggested as far back in 2008, but it was a more simplified version of, hey, you should come up with a couple of questions to ask parallel businesses who aren't directly competing with you. I was talking to a realtor. I'm like, you should talk to the home inspector. What are the common home inspector problems? What's the curb appeal value conundrum? Like, those are things that are of interest to the same audience, but they're happy to cross promote you because you're not eating their lunch, but you can multiply your reach by their reach. So I love this medium because it's both distribution, it's human connection, it's unique relevant content, and then it's you can add the AI on the back end layer. I started using Obsidian. I'm looking into a program called Uproot to add a memory layer to Claude so it remembers these things better, so that I can reference and pull from multiple different interviews that I've done along the same topic. And so I can use a prompt and say, hey, I need 4 or 5 quotes from 6 different interviews to consider to add to my article. Go. And I can do that. And now I've got, I did over 120 interviews with SEOs, small business owners, founders, consultants. So that's 120 interviews. That's 30 minutes each. That's 4,000, 3,000 words each. An insane amount of content. But in its just audio format, it's kind of trapped. It's locked in ice. So I'm using AI to delve into the trapped value, the dino DNA in the ember that is old podcasts.
We'll do a quick pivot here. While we talk kind of just some rapid fire questions, AI SEO, is there anything that AI can't answer about SEO?
Yes. AI does not have experiences. AI doesn't have a body. It doesn't have a voice. It doesn't have fingers. And for the most part, right now, it's almost entirely human directed. Like, it's kind of like a Master Blaster from the original Mad Max. So you got your human on the back of your brainless ghoul. You're like, attack over here, attack over there. They work together. Now, Open Claw and other things, and you're starting to see some of that being able to separate and go do things, and that's like its own superpower, which I'm slowly learning as a next level. But because AI in and of itself, it doesn't have a voice, so it can't actually talk to people. It can only communicate in text. So it can't actually jump through a lot of the system hoops to get the actual right data that you need in the context, in the window that makes sense, and it can only make the leaps of logic that have been described to it in a previous context. So a lot of what you do as an SEO is you're looking at disparate data groups, right? So you might have a window into Google Search Console, which is going to give you the overall number of clicks and impressions that your site has been receiving that Google is informing you about from your search. Now, on a surface level, it also displays a table that has numbers and it lists the clicks and the impressions next to it. Now, if you don't know that that data is sampled and actually only represents a fraction of your actual clicks that are displayed. So I have a project, I have an article that's ranking, it's ironic. I have an article that's ranking for why Google Search Console sucks, and it has over 120 clicks per month. Okay. Now there's a table underneath it that says what keywords sent that traffic, right? You would assume that you would see, 120 clicks worth of query, 1-to-1. No, I actually only get 5% visibility. It tells me 3 clicks that I got out of those 150 clicks for that particular search. So the page ranks. I got 150 clicks, but Google gave me data to say what specific 3 keywords it acknowledged clicked through. Now imagine if I took that tabular data of keyword query data and plugged it into Claude and asked it to analyze across all of my pages. Okay, where am I getting my keyword traffic from? Well, imagine what the LLM process is going to go through. It's going to say, hey, I have a table here and it has keywords and it has a value of a number. And this page over here has more clicks visible. So that page is not actually performing that well. But this other page has a lot more clicks that are visible, where it's a less controversial topic. So there's another post that I have where about 30% of the clicks are visible. Claude or any LLM would say the other page is more popular because of the way that I posted the prompt, focused on keywords and the data set that I gave it, right? But that's the wrong conclusion. But I only know that from my human experience of the limitations of this data pool that I'm looking at, that is not perfect. And it is variable in nature of why. I don't know. Nobody knows exactly why Google only displays that particular subset of query detail. They won't tell us. They have their own reasons for it. They call it personalization, whatever. I think it's just vindictive and evil, but that's something that in SEO AI cannot do. It can't hold the meta context for disparate data pools to make a larger summation of a bigger strategy, and hold those experience-based pieces of information of bias or limitations of a particular data set versus another data set. It's very poor at that. I haven't seen any. Now, I could imagine or imagineer potentially, if you had the right context and you set up the agents to be able to be given that specific context around that, maybe at the end you would come to some sort of similar conclusion that an analyst like me who's been doing this for 20 years does natively or intuitively. Like, we can kind of put our finger in the air and like, okay, it's blowing this way, and actually make like reasonable or rational decisions out of it and not come to false premises. So that's definitely something that we as SEOs can do that AI currently can't do.
What are you seeing as kind of the biggest miss with SEO and AI today?
Yeah, I think AI everywhere is the biggest miss. You know, the constant shoehorning in of AI onto every single platform, every single tool. You know, I was talking with a developer of Zapdigits. It's a SaaS that's a competitor to like Agent Advantage or Tableau. You know, the problem that you run into when you get into the analytics side of things is you have a huge privacy concern of if you're just feeding stuff into Claude, you have zero guarantee that that isn't going to be vacuumed up in some way and used as a part of the training data set. There's no guarantees. So you literally can't use it on analytics if you're operating in Europe. There's huge data privacy concerns. Apparently, Americans are just like, whatever, just take my data. I don't even know what's privacy. But the laws in Europe are much more strict around that, and so he has to be very conscientious about what he offers to be able to, as a tool, to be able to lock down and access and give information that can then create plain language reads off of it, because an inaccuracy in reading those data sets has potentially massive business impacts, right? Like the data is the data, but if you have a tool that can uh, change the data, not use all of the data, or misrepresent the data and then lie to you, obfuscate that it did it, then lie if confronted until you confront it enough. You're smiling because I know you've run into this. If you confront it enough, it will say, oh yeah, I did make that up. I didn't actually have it. I thought that I had connected Obsidian correctly to my Claude desktop for a couple days, and asked it to pull information from certain my old interviews. And because they're oral or chats that aligned with those, it could, those three times, or the fourth time, it didn't have that interview, and it bugged out. They're like, I can't do that. I'm like, wait, what do you mean you don't have Obsidian? You pulled from it in these three previous chats. No, I guess I made that up. So that's the biggest problem, honestly, is, you know, a system. The yes man problem is really the biggest glitch.
Where do you think SEO with AI is going? Where do you think that ends?
It's got to be hand in hand, because the reality is that, you know, and this came up with my interview with Jason from CaliQ. You have to understand the fundamental nature of the LLM model, which is that you have training data. And if that training data cannot answer your query, your prompt, then it does that live query and it looks to the A seed and then the B seed and then the C seed set of sites. And there's the query fan out model that operates somewhere in there. But either in SEO, you need to get into that knowledge graph, that knowledge model information set here and influence it. That's an opportunity. Because if you run a kids show and you don't label it as a kids show, and you need to get that information into the knowledge graph, how do you do that? Well, that's through SEO. That's getting articles published, PR, finding out what databases are out there that are being tapped into to build that knowledge base, whether that's Google's knowledge base and that gets pulled in, you know, or you have to get articles or entries into the public sphere that are being tapped to in that query fan out model of those reference points, those knowledge points that are being used to build those citations. So if you want visibility, you know, Google plays, you know, there are a lot of ways that the AI search visibility aspect is an augmented wrapper for Google results. right? Like there is the knowledge base aspect and there is that pool. But for so many niche industries, it doesn't have that. And so it's really basing it off of, a mixed pull of Google results. Well, how do you influence Google results? SEO. Like it's the same. Like it's this. The more that it changes, the more that it stays the same. So you have to either create assets yourself on your own site, but that's limited because of the nature of LLMs. It likes seeing data points from multiple different sites. So then that it goes to the offsite optimization side of SEO, which has been so obsessed for so long over blue clickable links that it lost half of its original potency of brand visibility. We became so obsessed with only doing outreach if I got a DR50 link back that we forgot, hey, there's value in getting listed on 15 different unique sites in this niche on unique articles where it's, positive sentiment about the brand. It's relative keywords saying what it is that you do and where and why and how with what and how you do it differently. Those types of placements and articles are now revalued that had been devalued by this obsession with DR, page rank, and the link building rot mentality.
What do you think about people saying that with AI the click is dead? How much are you buying into this?
Um, it's 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 a shorthand for a genuine frustration. Um, but it's inaccurate because you click to open your Claude program, you click into the area and you type and you get information and then you click and then you type again. And then eventually you get to a website. Like there is a point at which, you know, there is a click. Now the reality is that Google is a greedy bitch. Like it is hungry. It is ravenous. And there I have seen whole industries disappear overnight. 2001 to 2005, people were making hand over fist being digital brokers for hotels. You go to SERPs now, it's Google. Travel. There's huge amount of money, on these secondary sites, but Google gets its pay first. That interface there. So, the beast must be fed. And so there is an aspect of zero click, and Rand Fishkin is genius. He's been in front of this since I think the first Whiteboard Friday was somewhere around 2011 where he started pointing out these queries that were blue clickable links. Now it's showing this result, and they don't technically need to click through to see it to get their answer. But there's like this trade-off of the commoditization payoff element. There was this devil's bargain that was struck with early Google of, hey, we're website owners and publishers. We're going to publish content, and yes, now we'll allow you to scrape our content if you send us traffic. And that was the devil's bargain. That is falling apart. That at this point, that's only partially true. Because Google, for so many queries, whether it's the AI overview, where people would have done more research, it is extracting value and synthesizing an answer and satisfying a whole type of what we call top of the funnel query space. And you can fight it, but the reality is that they've already eaten your sandwich. Now, the nice thing is that we can be nice little baby birds and have it vomit up that pre-digested thing right into our stomachs. So if you're okay with being a baby bird, you can still profit. You just have to change the way that you're thinking about it. Like, I know that's a weird metaphor, but it really just is what it is. Google, AI, Claude, GPT, there's more middlemen. But the thing about middlemen is there has to be someone at the end of the loop selling something to deliver that product. Now, I can't speak to what's going to happen once we start seeing true integration of products being able to be sold through GPT, or Claude or whatever, or, true booking, agentic booking happening through Claude. That's a whole mysterious next 5 years of figuring out which nefarious corporation's going to get the corner market monopoly and $1 trillion of being able to get the largest piece of consumer action to pipe through their AI. And they'll become the new middlemen, and we'll have to figure out how does that even work. But for the moment, you know, um, it's not truly zero click. It's just a second click in a second window. Because even if like you do you want to find something, I've done this, try to find a different piece of software. At the end of the day, you still have to go to that site to do the last qualification and just vet, verify, and purchase. So there's that last piece: vet, verify, and purchase. Vet, verify, and purchase. So your site needs to be really good at presenting, your qualifications. Are you legit? Um, exactly what it is that you do, and make it gosh darn easy to do that thing. If you don't do those three things, then you've missed on conversion rate optimization anyways. And even under the old rules of Google and sending traffic, you were wasting a bunch of time and money. And you were a salon that was so busy, getting the right picture of Clarette's hair that you never said what city you were in. You never listed your booking link. You never put a phone number that they can call. The number of times that I have been asked to help with somebody's website and they don't have a phone number that's at the top of the page. They don't have an email. They don't have their address listed. And if you read the text, they don't actually say what it is they do here. They don't. It's maddening and insane that so many people can create websites and forget to say what it is that they do. Oh, we're the best at customer service. Yeah, okay, so is Spanky's restaurant and the toilet company. Like, so what? Like, that's not a unique selling proposition. Tell me what your USP is, prove it, and I'll buy your stuff.
People fail to realize this. Can AI truly make a answer it's never made before? Like, does it just regurgitate content, and that's probably the very likely part there, or is it trying to actually intelligently predict? So where can people find out more information about you, Jeremy, and where can they kind of connect with you at?
So my website is seoarcade.com. That's for my digital marketing agency. Like I said, it's podcast centric. I'll build links for you. I'll generate a podcast and turn that into a content engine for you. And if you need boutique, SEO consulting, I can execute on that as well. That's the second backup layer. 20 years of experience, easy. You can find me directly for just the SEO stuff, one-on-one consulting, training. If you want to sit down for a couple of hours and just have me tell you everything that I know about SEO, then check me out at jeremyrivera.seo.com. I have a ton of podcasts in the SEO space. It's unscriptedseo.com. I also interview small business founders, small business owners, consultants just for SMB. So it's unscriptedsmallbusiness.com. I have Unscripted SaaS as a podcast. You can look that up. Unscripted Cannabis, if you're into the ganja. Unscripted Home Improvement. You can kind of get a theme there that most of my podcasts fall under that unscripted. Mostly so I don't have to do editing, but also I can't read and talk to somebody at the same time. So I never had the possibility of it. And so it's just improv. I make up the questions as we go along. I think people like it. I've been doing it for a couple of years. I took over the Unscripted SEO podcast from a previous host who interviewed Lily Ray, Rand Fishkin, and other luminaries. I've had some great guests on, Morty Oberstein. Fantastic SEOs come on all the time. So if you want to listen and learn, you can find me there. I'm on literally every social media channel. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Substack. So if you look for Jeremy Rivera Unscripted SEO, Jeremy Rivera SEO, you'll find me in all of those places. Happy to chat at anybody. And if anybody wants to be a guest, I'm happy to support that too. Anybody who's got a business, wants to be interviewed, come on board.